These giant headstocks behind me are Clipston Colliery, reminder of once a thriving industry in the United Kingdom, coal mining, an industry my father was involved in all of his life. He lived and breathed it, it meant a lot to him, and he loved coal. The following is an interview that we conducted with him many years ago. He shares his thoughts, his feelings, and his attitude towards life, politics, family, all those kind of things. So please enjoy it and share it with me now.
I was born in Silksworth, just outside Sunderland, a typical mining village, earth toilets, tap at the bottom of the garden, tin bath. That's what it was, and the schooling was a sort of brick floor thing with oven in, with all coal ovens, that kind of thing. So hot water system, you boil the kettle if you want, or a big pan. And, so when we came to Yorkshire with all mod con, semi-detached, although I can remember the early days, not very clearly, but there's little things that stick out in your mind. I can remember a few things, like falling down this corner and breaking my leg, and for some reason I never liked eggs after that. There was some connection between the nurse and by knocking an egg over something. Well, we came to Yorkshire at probably November time of 1926, after the 26 strike had finished. We moved into a house with electricity, flush toilets and garden front and back, and it was quite a palace by comparison. I remember that very clearly. And when we used to go back to Durham on his holidays, I always used to go to my mum's or my dad's family, and the comparison, and to be fair, for ages I used to be terrified. I went to this earth, it was a netty we call it, the earth toilet, and just the seat, that was it, and pieces of paper, you know, to clean it up. So the comparison was quite dramatic. You had to go down the yard for a cup of water or whatever. The hot water, you got bathed in a tin bath at the front of the fire, every Friday usually. So the comparison with my childhood was quite dramatic. But nevertheless, we always had a happy childhood in the sense that going on holiday, and how we used to do it, relatives in Durham, at Silksworth, would buy a return day ticket, day return, which we would buy the return half back. So for £5 bob each and £0.50 for the kids, you could get a fortnight's holiday, because we always used to arrange, right? Well, we're coming back on such and such a date, and there was somebody there at the station to buy your return. So that's the way you did that, because there was lack of funds. But it's quite dramatic. I enjoyed it, actually. I was quite good at maths. I was pretty good at doing essays, although the handwriting was poor. I could write stories, and I took an interest in English. Certainly liked science, certainly liked woodwork. I enjoyed woodwork. I found I was pretty handy with my hands. And so I developed that way. And I would remember, they said, there came the equivalent, I suppose, to 11 plus, where you could go to grammar school. And Palmer, if you learn to write better, we can send you to grammar school. I could always top the class in about 3 or 4 subjects. And, but it was the quality of the handwriting. It's always been poor. It's not very good now, but it's better than it was then. But these are the things that influence, I think, where you're going to go and what you're going to do. I never wanted to be a miner. I hated the thought of being a miner going underground. I'd seen my dad coming home tired. I'd seen a few accidents, or the result of a few accidents. Seen him rubbing the coal out of his hair in front on a paper, where he'd been in chopping coal with a pick, you know. And it never appealed to me, quite honest. But like everybody else, for instance, when I left school, the family said, you can have a fortnight's holiday to get ready for work. We owe you that. And of course it was July. I was sent for within a week because jobs were being lost. And I went all over Doncaster, the villages and the towns around about Doncaster, Barnsley, Mexborough, for work. The inevitable cry was, had you been 16 or had you had an examination result or whatever, but no work. And I had to go to pit.
How did you actually get to end up being a...
Well, they said, look, you've got to go to pit. So I did some evening school with one of the senior overmen, a chap called Robinson, and he was like equivalent to the under manager. So we did elementary mining, you know, maths and measuring, and I also had to go down to pit gates every day. So I'd spend the morning going around Doncaster or wherever looking for work, and then get back to pit for usually 1 o'clock, because the under manager would come out at pit about 1:30. And there would be all like 20, 30 of us, depending, at the gates, stood there talking. Someone was riding his bikes about to pass time on until the other man, the under manager came out, and occasionally he'd just go straight across, never say to anybody. Other times we'd say, right, you, or you. And one day I was one of the yous. February 1935, I was one of the yous, and I went down a pit. You were never allowed on the face till you were about 17 or 18 in the main. But if you went on, you went as a haulage hand, stemming lad, and our Bill went on as a stemming, dragging bags of stemming for the shot fighter charges, always with, or handling materials or whatever. So you didn't actually go on the coal face till average was be 20, 21 for the average in the main, unless you were very lucky and knew somebody who could get you on. Because remember, tube stores were the thing in them days, so it was a different sort of situation. But what you did, you learnt a couple of tubs up, how to twist them on flat sheets, how to handle heavier stuff, and a whole range of things like that. And I went pony driving into tube stores. In fact, I was probably one of the very few left, must be one of the very few left, who actually drove ponies into tube stores and has gone right through the latest technique to an NF pit. The first week's wage, like, you join the union. That's the first thing. So you'd queue up, and there would, little tin cans with your money in them days, and a few shillings or whatever, and if you're well paid, you got £5 note, you know, that was marvellous. But usually a few pound notes and some coppers. And the thing to do, right, always said, and you were black, because no baths. And so off you went up the stairs to the club, in the club, and there was the secretary and the treasurer and 1 or 2 committee men, and you paid, you entered the union and you paid. And my dad says, now, every week, that's the first thing you do, nothing else, that's it. And it would be twopence a week then, a fought for men. I have some memory. One of my first meetings, I would probably be 17 or just out later than 17. I went to 1 or 2 branch meetings. I will remember a bloke called George Raleigh, who finished up being my hero in a way. Some of the blokes had gone down jail for their trade union activity, which was a common occurrence in those days. And these 3 blokes had come back, having done the 3-month or whatever it was, and apparently they'd had an interview with management. And in order to get set on at Hickleton Main, they had to agree not to take part in any more trade union activity. And this George Raleigh stood up, and one of the marvellous speech about the iniquities of workmen not being allowed to join the trade union. If that's what the officials of this branch, I'll tear my card up. In actual fact, George Raleigh was barred from the pit for a long time, and he got back when we elected him as check weighman, because check weighman had undisputed right. And although he was employed by the men, not by the coal board, but by the private company. And George Raleigh, for a long period of time, was one of my heroes. His elocution, an ability to talk and argue, I thought he was great. Loyalty was unquestionable. I remember I'd only, as I said, started in February in 35. Within a month, we were on strike. And also a little bit after that, and that was some collier strike. One of the lads, we had a pony, who was always quite fierce. He'd lash out at you, kick you, and he'd bite you. This lad, he was timid, and he refused to ride this pony, and the management won't let him down the pit. Every one of us, no question, straight out the pit. So the loyalty is inbuilt in the sense that you're taught very early, if you don't stick together, you fall, and it's as simple as that. In 1935, 36, certainly up to the outbreak of war, most miners were on 3 days on, 3 days off. Occasionally the pit would work 4 days. Many colliers, if they worked 4 days, they're worse off than working 3 and 3 days down. And they would get up to all sorts of nonsense to make sure they didn't get a 4th shift. If there were 5, that were okay. But if it were 4, no way. I've seen them pull props out and bring roof in, all sorts of things, so they couldn't go to work. I remember we used to go down on a paddy, on two paddies, and on a handless main and tail ollies, that's roll at the front, roll at the back, and it broke down. And it was further to walk back than go down, but no way. They went out. No, there's no transport, we're going out. And what you find with that is fantastic. You may not always agree with it, but you know not to agree with it is a sign of weakness, and you lose out on all sorts of argument. I went on the coalface in 1946, and those days I went the sort of training scheme that you have now. You went with a bloke like I might go with you, as the experienced bloke, and you would show me how to get the pick and the shovel, and how to clean that, and how to get on the shop fire, clean that, and how to get the coal. And you picked it up as you went on. Nobody actually supervised you. He'd work his own stint, and you were there like. And one Saturday morning, March the 1st, 1947, I was chopping these tops down, and the lot came in, and I got buried, and I finished up with the fractured skull. I was quite knocked about a bit, and so for 10 days I couldn't see or read. And but the problem was in '47. That was the beginning of probably the worst winter we've had. But when we'd just not been married long, then she would come every day with some tapioca, because I could drink, couldn't eat. And I used to feed me with a teapot for about 10 days. Well, it wasn't easy, I'll be quite honest with you. I mean, you had to do it, because that's the living, and it wasn't easy. In fact, for probably years, many years actually, every time there was a bit of some loose stuff from the roof, you could feel this prickle down your spine. You feel it, but at the end of the day, you've got a job to do, and that's it. And I don't think I ever even thought twice about it. It fills you with some concern, but what you certainly do is begin to learn how to look after yourself. In 1960, I was sent on this job on what they call a copco then, and it was a compressed air shovel that went into the earth and filled a bucket. You trammed it back, whipped the bucket over the back into a tub. You had a tub with it, and well, this one was loaded onto the conveyor belt actually, and it had a soft tyre. The valves had been iced up over the weekend, and it was Monday, and I got myself trapped at the side of the rings, and I finished up with airline fracture of the pelvis. Very short, but out of that I had a pulmonary embolism. I think that was the first time I questioned whether I ought to continue down pit, but I knew I couldn't get a job with the same sort of money anywhere else. When I was cycle racing, I would come out of the pit, go home, get bathed. I used to try to be bathed first, because there were 3 of us. Well, my dad always used to like his an hour on the carpet before in front of fire. That was his way of recuperating. And so if we could get in the bath quick, then I could have my dinner, have an hour, and then go out and do my training. And it was a problem. And food, my mum was a marvellous cook. And for every day, there was a suet dumpling, whether it was onion suet dumpling or whatever, apple dumpling, all the suet dumplings. That was either a main course or a sweet or whatever. So I said to him, look, Mum, do you mind? I don't want suet dumplings. Can I please? And there was quite a fracas about that. My mum was quite indignant. There was something wrong with the cooking. She couldn't understand that the food I had was very good. The suet dumpling, I never felt like going training on it. But it's things like that to change attitude, which is very difficult. But my mum did accept it eventually. And it was, I mean, it was marvellous of her in a way. And it wasn't easy for her. Because if you didn't eat, you weren't, you know, there was something wrong with you. You're your own master, you're time trialing, you're him. Nobody else. I had to train hard. One, I never had the resource, financial resource to do it, so I was always on ropey tackle. But to work down pit, to go out and train, and then, for instance, when I'm at coalface, I've gone in on a Saturday morning at 4:08 in the morning, so I could get out and go down to Birmingham to race on the Sunday. Catch a train in the afternoon and go down to Birmingham to race down there. So these are, I mean, I was dedicated. I've always wanted to be better than anybody else, or as good as the best, if not better than anybody else. Not how I achieved it, but that was the driving force to be totally involved in what you're doing. I remember one bloke, after war, like he come back, and I went cold face then, and "You're Athur Palmer," he said. "You're that bugger I used to play all about when I was in trenches in Middle East," because they used to get local papers. And he says, "Some days, there's one of our lads, right chuffed, when you're in the paper. Other times, not so good, like." So I think it's things like that, they suddenly realise that a lot of people know about you. Tell you a little story. When they first brought the x-rays in for chest, well, I went on the Monday on a chest x-ray. On the third day, I've got a letter, little postcard, I've got to go back for another examination. So I walked in this, and it was all British clothed off, and the blokes were sat around, and I walked in. Bloody hell, if he's got to come back here, and remember I was racing, if he got to come back here, he said, we ain't got no chance. So when I went in, apparently they'd seen on my x-ray some abnormal development of the heart, and they wanted to know what I'd done, because they hadn't seen any other miner like that before. But these blokes were quite petrified. Christ. But I think it's things like that that motivate you, and I've always had that motivation. And I think if you do your best and you try hard and you succeed, it's worth doing. If you don't succeed and you've tried hard, well, that's just too bad. If I tell you I run a 100-mile event in Nottingham, £3 first prize, I submitted a bill for £2.17 a tanner, and I've still not got the other half a crown because I'd have been a professional. And that's true. In fact, they brought cycle accessories out in 1948, and that was because a lot of lads were feeling the pinch. If they could have accessories instead of silver cutlery or whatever, it would help them on their career. And I remember going to Grantham at the Road Club in September, and deciding second prize was £2, I'd have a £2.50 new racing tyre. And he said, "Why, aren't you going to win it?" I said, "No, I can't win it in the morning, but I have to be second hours." And these things like that that help you to get by. Without the mining, the education wouldn't have happened, all right? Without the mining, it's doubtful if I'd have done the cycling to the same degree. It had a part to play indirectly. I mean, first of all, you develop physically, you have an attitude of mind to your job and how you can do it. So while I see them as the most important parts of my development, mining always at the background, and you can't divorce them. But I never identify that as the prime thing. I mean, clearly every day of your life you're going down and you have to play a role, because not to, then it's not worth the light. Somebody else suffers or you suffer or whatever. So I was proud of what I did in the mining industry. I was the first bloke to get a snap time in Gedling, but through my own efforts, through lobbying, through getting on tabletop. I was always prepared to address the miners and give them the opportunity to discuss things. I don't know. I think some of the things my father said when I first started Pit, like you join the trade union, you always stick up for your mates, you always defend your earnings, because remember in Yorkshire piecework rate of earnings, the gaffer was always taking money out of the tin, always, and you always got to fight for it back. I think that motivates you. I can't ever remember that consciously I made a decision to be the chairman of the county council or be a politician. I moved into it as a gradual sequence of events, of everyday happenings. And certainly when I first came to Nottingham, I joined the Labour Party. I joined the Labour Party in Yorkshire, but it's full of ramifications, all sorts of nonsense. It wasn't the Labour Party I wanted to join when I came to Nottingham. I didn't fully join it till 1960, because all I could hear was internal skirmishing and not politics. So I think I've always had a thing about politics. I read a lot of left-wing book club stuff, left book club stuff at the end of the war and during the war. And I remember when I was having the accident in Ickleton, Maine, reading the Russian influence on the Western world, and the old vicar, well, he was a Catholic parson. Couldn't believe I believed it. And the more he thought I didn't, the more I proved I did. Like, he never come back to see me, actually. But there it is.
If any of your family or your friends were had to carve something on your headstone when you're gone, and you won't be gone for a long time because you want to live forever, I rather wonder, would they come up with something like Arthur never liked coming second?
I don't know. I never. Sorry, I just can't answer that one. I don't know if the family can understand and be proud of what I've done, I'll be happy. And it's not easy for them, because I've never tried to shove my politics down their throats. I've hoped it would rub off. If it has, then I'm delighted. If it ain't, that's just too bad. But it's their problem. There's their life. I lived my life. My dad said quite a few little sayings to me, but that influenced me. Perhaps I may have failed, I don't know. Then I would be sorry about that. But it weren't for one to try.